everybody, Dylan here from the Tech Dork Times, and this is our review of The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2. Where do I even begin with this game? It was insane, the negative backlash that it was getting. First and foremost, I just want to get it out of the way. I love The Last of Us Part 2, and I really loved the first game as well, so just, if anyone's waiting for me to jump on the bandwagon and start crapping on this game, it's not going to happen. I really, really liked it, and I'll get into the details of why in just a second. Before we get going with the review, this one is a little bit challenging because there are a lot of spoilers that I think are required to discuss to properly analyze the story portion of the game, at least. So we're not going to make this a spoiler review, but I will warn that there might be some very mild setup spoilers, but nothing major, nothing about character or big story beats or anything like that. Bottom line is this is a good review to watch if you're just curious about the game and wondering if you should try it out. Spoiler alert, you should. That's the only spoiler. My favorite thing about the story to this game, and the reason I would say that all of the hate is largely unjustified, is that this game challenges you. It's not fan service. I think too many times developers and storytellers try too hard to cater to their audience, and this is absolutely not that. And for all the best reasons. It's not like it was forced or just like a shock tactic or anything like that. All of the choices in this game felt very justified given the nature of the Last of Us universe. I will say, still spoiler free, I do have a small gripe with one thing that happens, because logically speaking it doesn't actually make total sense given the natures of the characters. That's probably the most vague explanation and most appropriate explanation I can give you in a spoiler-free review, so I will just say that. But another argument I would make to that piece, and it's the big moment we're talking about here, if anyone's seen the spoilers for the game, it's that big moment. That happens because people change. People, I can't even say that. Ugh. The character work, the voice acting, the character models are all fantastic, and they all combine to just create such a gripping tale. One of my favorite things is any moment that Joel and Ellie are on screen together. The way that they've designed these characters, how lifelike everyone looks, you can see the weariness in Joel as he's getting older and carrying what he's done in the first game into this game. And Ellie, you know, is getting more and more cynical all the time, and watching them try to connect in a world that is slowly falling apart. It's all heartbreaking and wonderful, and everything comes together to really tell that story well. It's also worth noting that this game is at least twice as long as the first one, I believe. I think the first game was 15 hours, and this one's 30, maybe 40 if you really take your time. It's a really long game, but one of the best things about that is it gives you a lot of time to get to know the characters, to familiarize yourself with current characters, and to really develop an attachment to new ones. It also just does a great job of not villainizing anyone in this story. We get to see things, or at least understand the motivations of a lot of different characters, and by the end of it I was kind of rooting for everyone, and that to me is the sign of a really great story, or at least really great character work. Okay, so I think that's it for spoilers. Again, I might make an actual video breaking down why I think this game, the story itself, is so brilliant, but just I'll leave it at saying this is a wonderful tale about the things we're willing to do for the people we love, and how that consumes us, or can consume us. Moving on to the gameplay in The Last of Us Part 2. For anyone who's played The Last of Us Part 1, the gameplay is mostly the same. But this happens to be a game where that's not an issue at all. In fact, it would kind of suck if the game changed too much. I thought one of the best things about the first game was the gameplay. It's still a stealth-based gunfighting game where you're sneaking around humans and zombies called infected, sometimes both at the same time, and that's where the magic of this game and the gameplay really shines. What I love about The Last of Us Part 2 is that they've introduced two different factions of humans and the infected. I don't want to go into too much detail, don't want to risk any spoilers, but the two different factions of humans actually behave differently in fights, and they communicate differently. Like, for instance, one actually calls out what they're doing, and calls out to their other squad mates and says, I'm going here, I'm flanking here, or whatever. And another one of the human factions only communicates using whistles. And that's one of the most brilliant additions to this game, and one of the things that I think really makes the gameplay shine is that it falls to you as the player to figure out what those whistles mean. And slowly over time you will start to understand what like a double whistle means versus a single, or weird little rhythms or what have you. But regardless of who you're fighting or how they're communicating, the gameplay is still really tense and leaves you feeling like a regular human trying to survive in the apocalypse. Your ammo is scarce, your materials are scarce, and you can actually tweak that in the game menu if you want to make it more difficult or more forgiving. But we'll get to that in a second. I love that this game gives you multiple ways to approach every encounter, they call them, with humans and zombies. Whether you like planting bombs and leading people into them, using a bow and arrow, or using your knife up close and personal, or even using melee weapons and actually like fighting people. And that's another place where I think the gameplay is awesome. That melee, hand-to-hand combat, or if you're just using like close-up weapons, it is intense and violent, and it's not like I'm praising the violence, but it really is visceral and puts you right in that moment with Ellie as she's fighting off whoever's trying to kill her. As much fun as those moments are, which is the bulk of the gameplay, is fighting humans and zombies, there are incredible puzzle sequences in this game, and I'm gonna fanboy out for a second here and I promise I don't have a rope fetish, but in this game, the rope coding or programming or whatever you want to call it, the way the physics of the rope responds is just incredible. It can wrap around walls, it can zip through under a window, and as you tug on it, you actually see the slack, or lack thereof. You can tug on it to the point where you've basically bottomed out the length of rope. You have to kind of play around with it to really know what I'm talking about, but trust me, there's so many cool puzzles in the game that revolve around this rope mechanic, and it's just a great little mix-up to the gameplay when you're getting when the combat's getting a little stale. And for all you completionists and collectible junkies, there's plenty of those to go around. There's lots of cards you can collect, and I feel like there's something else you can collect too, but the big thing are these trading cards, and one of the cool things is when you finish the game, you can review each chapter and see how many of each collectible you've found or missed or what have you, so you know where you can go back to tick things off. I like that. It's a nice little touch. I should also say that this game, versus the first one, has done a slight tweak to the setup of each level. A lot of the levels have these semi-open world hubs where you're free to explore how you'd like. And you can go clear out different buildings or locations that have nothing to do with moving the main story forward, but you can find extra resources, ammo, pills to upgrade your skills. That rhymes. But what's really cool about these little side quests, I'm going to call them, is that some of them actually unlock new cutscenes, so you can see characters interact with each other in ways that you wouldn't if you just rushed through the story. So if you're one of those people who just has to know how the whole game ends, I recommend you play it again and go through all of these side quest areas, because there are a couple cool moments that I will not spoil here, but they really add some depth to character relationships. I think, if I'm getting this right, there's 5 difficulties, so there's very light, moderate, hard, and grounded, I think, at this point. There might be another one in there somewhere, but then there's also custom difficulties where you can change things like the damage that you take, how hard it is or easy it is to stay in stealth, how many enemies spawn, how many resources spawn. The options are endless, so you can tweak the game to the perfect level of difficulty or just crank everything up and just be a crazy person. Before we move on to the summary of this, I also just want to mention one other thing. There's a really cool mini-game type thing that is shown a few times throughout the game, which is playing your guitar. So you actually take the controller and you strum it here as if it's a guitar, and you move the analog stick around to choose different chords to play. It ends up being somewhat important to the game, I would argue, but it also is just a cool little thing to do. So let's put this all together. I don't want to post a review like I love this game. It is absolutely a masterpiece. It will go down as one of the best, if not the best, games of this generation. But I don't want to just fanboy about it and not think a little critically about this. I will say that I do understand some of the concerns people have with the narrative, and there is an issue in the middle of the game where your progress basically resets. It's kind of hard to explain any more than that, but I don't love that. It derails the momentum of the story a little bit, so I understand some critiques of that as well. And like I said, with the big moment, there are some character inconsistencies that you could level criticism against, but honestly, the character work and just the overall narrative are so gripping that it was not something that stuck around or really bothered me that much. Although I do understand the criticism. This wouldn't be a Tech Dork review if we didn't do a quick summary of who should buy the game. And so in my mind, the people who should buy the game are fans of survival horror games like Resident Evil, and then of course, fans of the first game. If you played the first game, I really think you're gonna like this one. Just don't go in expecting fan service. Go in to expect like these are living, breathing characters. That's what's so great about this story. So you're just going to experience what happens next to them, not what you wish happened to them. And of course, there will be people who don't like this game. The people that I think should probably skip this game are those expecting a run and gun kind of game. If you really like Apex, Titanfall, Call of Duty, any sort of first-person shooter, or even third-person, like even to some degree like a Tomb Raider type thing, it's not that. You are not at all superhuman, let's say. You have very limited ammo, and the gunplay, I believe, is designed to be purposefully clunky, so that it feels like you're a regular human. And yes, you can upgrade your guns and upgrade your skills so that you handle weapons better, but it never feels like you're Master Chief or a soldier from Call of Duty. So just keep that in mind. You don't have enough resources, and the design is not such that you can run around gunning everyone down. And then, of course, the game is missing multiplayer, although Naughty Dog has said multiplayer will be coming soon, but that's a TBD sort of thing. TDB. TBD. TDDBBD. And also, if you're looking for really deep RPG mechanics like skill trees and really affecting the narrative some way through your character choices, that's not really here. I will say that as I was playing it, I never fully felt like I was that character. I felt like I was alongside, on the shoulder of that character as they were doing things. But if you don't fall into any of those camps, none of those points turn you off, this is a strong buy. I'm calling it now. The best game of this generation. Hands down, if you combine the tense gameplay and incredibly gripping storyline that has left me thinking about it since I played it. In fact, even when I was getting this review ready and revisiting the game, I was getting all emotional playing through the beginning again. I think that's enough fanboying about The Last of Us Part 2. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Anyone who has heard the criticism and that's turning them off, I really urge you to not let that be the nail in the coffin. Decide for yourself. Rewatch this video, figure out if the gameplay sounds like it's for you and if the kind of story, the bleak storyline is something that you're interested in. That's it for the review here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe, or one of them, two of them, three of them. Go crazy, have fun with it. Really helps us keep the channel up and running and helps us keep punching out videos like this one so you guys can make informed purchases on the games coming out soon. Until next time, check out the blog for all of our articles. Stay tuned for more review videos. We post them every week. And because we're just getting started here, we will be pushing them out even more frequently than that, hopefully every other day. So yeah, look forward to that. And as always, stay dorky.